Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've got an incredible talent to introduce you tonight, a guy that I've followed for a couple of years. I've tried to get involved in the Mississauga Arts Council and nominated him for a Marty Award and had the pleasure of seeing him perform. And he performs as a tribute band, I guess, as Elton Ron, as a tribute band of Elton John. His name is Ron Camilleri. He's got an incredible history in Canadian music business. He's been involved in the business, in the record business as an executive, as a composer, and now he is a performer. And he's a great talent. He's an incredible singer, performer, pianist, and he's an actor, because what you do on stage, sir, is you act like you're Elton John. It's more than just the music. You're not a cover band. You really are almost Elton John. So welcome, Elton Ron Camilleri, to the show.
Hi, Brian. Great to be here.
So tell me, how did you, we'll go through the whole history, but how did you become Elton Ron?
Well, my whole life, I kind of had music in my life since I was a little kid. And my father introduced me to Elton when I was pretty young. And I just really took to his albums, and I loved his sound, and I used to sing along to everything. And all these years later, I didn't know that it would come to fruition that I would become an Elton John tribute artist. But certainly I knew his phrasing, and everyone told me I always looked a bit like Elton. So it was one day, just by fluke, I hadn't performed live in a long time. And my brother just called me up one day, said, let's get some friends together, go to a bar, and let's play some music. So I'm a guitarist, that's my first instrument is guitar. So we showed up at a local bar. I called a friend of mine, Stu, in Mississauga. I said, find us a place to play. So I found a 100-person bar in Etobicoke called Timothy's Pub, which a lot of people in Mississauga will know.
Yep.
And
Brown's Line.
Yeah. And we went in there on a Sunday night, and there was hardly anyone there, because we went in under just a new name that nobody had heard of. And we started playing like Oasis and Beatles and everything. And the owner came up to us, Tim, and said, hey, if I flip you a couple extra $100, would you play some more? So we did that, and everyone got on their cell phones, and they started calling all their friends. By the end of the night, we had packed the place. So Tim asked us back the next week. So we said, oh, we're in trouble. We don't know enough songs. So I said, I'll bring a piano, and we'll see what happens. So I put my guitar down the next week and sat at the piano, and I played Rocket Man, and the place went crazy. So my brother figured out, he said, hey, you know what? He said, this might be a good thing here. So I put the guitar back on, we played another few songs, and some woman yells out, play another Elton John song. So I played something like Daniel or Candle in the Wind, and the place exploded. So we got asked back again, and my brother said, let's do a whole night of Elton John. And that's how it started. And people just continually come up to me and say, you realize how much you look like him, and you play piano like him, and you sound like him. And I go, yeah, I know. It's kind of freaky. So that's how it really started. And from there, we got bigger dates. Next thing you know, we got invited to play the Elton John convention in Las Vegas. And now it's a big deal where I can take it to almost any venue in North America we want to play. So it started from Genesis in a little bar, just having some fun.
The schedule of dates that you sent out recently for this year's performances is pretty daunting. You're as big as Taylor Swift.
And I still have another, well, I wouldn't say that, but I think we have another 10 or 15 dates to add into that as well. There's certain venues that don't like to announce things too early. So I'll be adding more shows. It's getting to the point now where the guys, we filled up every single weekend of the summer and the fall, because we're pretty much weekend warriors. Some of our guys have full-time jobs, but I think that might even change next year if we continue to get the kind of demand for the show that we've got. But
the closest one I saw was Coburg in March.
Yeah, that's our next show. We're doing a show in Coburg. It's a smaller show, smaller theater, but we wanted to go back. We just played the Capitol Theater in Port Hope. We've sold that place out 4 times in a row, so we played New Year's there, and a whole bunch of people wanted us to come back, so we can't come back to the same theater, so we found the Coburg Victoria Theater that we're going to go into. We're going to play a show there, and then from that point on, I think we go to Washington State. We just played California, Arizona. We're going to be going to Ohio and Michigan and Iowa. We're all through the states, but it all starts up, probably next month. It'll really start to get a little crazy for us.
Are there many Elton John tribute bands?
Yes, there's a lot of them. Here's the thing. Anybody can put a costume on. The difference is you got to sound like him. You got to play piano like him. You got to have his mannerisms. And what I find is I did a lot of research before I did this because I said, if I'm going to do it seriously, I want to see what's out there. There's a lot of guys that wear the duck outfits and the feather boas and that. I don't go quite that far. I did put on a little Elton for you here, though, because you kind of mentioned that you wanted something. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll wear something sequiny and I'll have some fun. But for me, it's all about the music. I want to have the best musicians. I want to make sure we play everything accurately. I want to have his mannerisms. I want to have fun with the audience. And for some reason, when we played Vegas, it was the thing. I always thought that we were one of the prime Elton tributes in the world. But when we played Vegas and the band came up to us and said, "Hey, you guys are the best in the world we've ever heard." So that kind of told us, all right, we're maybe that little step up. So there's a lot of them, and they're popping up every day because now's the thing. Everybody wants to get into the tribute market. The money's much better than playing, your jam nights at the bars and stuff. So I think that's why there's so many of them now. But I think you could say that about any act. There's lots of Eagles acts. There's lots of ABBA acts. There's lots of Elton acts. It's a whole industry in itself, the tribute industry. Who knew?
That's interesting. Why is the tribute industry so big right now?
I think a lot of people, as they get older, maybe they're not quite attaching to the new music the way we used to attach to the music in the 60s and 70s. Like for us, I don't know if you remember, we're probably around the same age, but when I was a kid and a new album came out, whether it was Led Zeppelin or Elton John or later on Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, when these guys brought out albums, it was an event. And we would sit and listen to the radio and you'd wait for that single to come on. It was really something. And I think they're missing that now. There's so many ways to listen to your music. I know that when I worked at Sony, we used to talk about it, that the radio became fragmented. There was a time when you could put Q107 on in Toronto and you could hear everything from James Brown to Led Zeppelin all on one station. That doesn't happen anymore. It's all fragmented. So you'll get like a Taylor Swift station and then you'll get some classic rock. So the people are kind of yearning the old sound. And let's face it, as the artists get older, it's still great to go see the real thing. It's great to see the real Springsteen. It's great to see the real Elton, but they're not in their prime anymore. So some people really like to hear the old sound of back in the 70s. And some of the tribute artists are able to do that. They're able to take you back to the prime of the artist where they can still hit all the notes and play all the parts the way it used to be done. Because even Davy Johnson said, and I told Davy, I said, hey, when I'm 76, I'm probably not going to be able to sing these songs either. That because it was so high in the original days, they can't do it anymore. So they have to readjust the songs down. But it's an event to go see Elton. With us, we try to take you back to the albums so it sounds a little bit more accurate to the way they used to do it. But as I get older, I won't be able to do that anymore. So I'm going to do it as long as I can. But I think that's why tribute acts are really hitting a note and hitting a chord with a lot of people. It takes you back.
Elton also has really a compelling story, and I think a lot of us, number one, followed the story, and then number two, the movie, what was it called? Rocket Man was really, quite an interesting and I thought an excellent movie. You convey some of that personality of Elton John on stage, don't you?
Yeah, it's really funny because, as I said before, I was a guitarist. So when I bought myself a piano, I'm self-taught on piano. The way I learned to play was listening to Elton John and Billy Joel. So Elton is a very percussive player. He really hits the piano hard. And even if you gave me some classical music to play, I would play it like Elton because that's how I learned. So I didn't know that now that's going to really help me. But when I sit on stage and I play the piano, I can really only play it like Elton because that's the way I taught myself how to play it. So it's really become an advantage for me. In fact, there's been some venues where I've broken strings on the piano because I'm hitting it really hard and I'm playing it percussively. But that's the way Elton plays. He was always a very physical player. And that's the way I learned. And as far as his mannerisms, for hours in a day, I used to sit in my basement and have the records on the headphones, and I'd be singing along to Elton and kind of, mimicking his stage. It's just something that people do when they have an idol. In fact, I'll give you a very funny story. Not many people know this. The Mississauga train derailment, I was in my basement with the headphones on listening to Saturday Night Art for Fighting, and I missed the whole thing. The album was like blasting in my headphones for like an hour. And then someone came down and said, hey, something just happened. We have to be, evacuated. And I'm like, what? I had my headphones on. I had no idea.
What about how flamboyant he was? Are you comfortable with how flamboyant he was?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't wear the duck outfits, and I don't get that crazy. I love his sequin outfits. I don't mind wearing the elevator boots and the crazy glasses. That's all part of the fun of it. And you kind of need that to get the persona. There's a lot of times I'll walk out and I'll get an ovation before I even sit at the piano because of the outfit I'm wearing. I'll give you an example. We played Chicago, and we got booked for Chicago just after they won the World Series. That was the first show in Chicago. So I had a full sequin outfit made head to toe of a Chicago Cubs uniform. And I walked out with a baseball bat in the Chicago Cubs outfit, and I got a 5-minute standing ovation. They were singing songs like from the Chicago, you know, Take Me Out to the Ball, all that kind of stuff. And I like to do that kind of stuff. I like to bring the fun to the show. So when we come out and people see us, they expect Elton Ron to really bring something maybe a little bit different than just some guys coming out and singing for, you know, singing songs. We like to make it a bit of an event.
But you also perform really good music. Tell us, if you could, a little bit about your musicians that back you up.
My guys are excellent musicians. And here's the thing. I've had a lot of people want to play in my band. And some people, if they come over for a rehearsal, they realize just how difficult the songs are. We do everything in the original keys. And Elton John, if anyone's out there as a pianist, they know that Elton John plays a lot of things in the key of E flat. Well, most bands would change that into some type of a key that's going to be a little bit easier for guitar and bass. But we don't. We play everything in the original keys. So it makes it a lot more difficult for a musician when they're playing Elton John. Plus, his chord structure it's not like playing the Eagles. It's not G, C, and D. Elton goes all over the map with his chords, and he's playing all kinds of diminished and these suspended chords. And it takes a lot of rehearsal to get the songs down. But they're absolutely incredibly well crafted, and his string arrangements are off the charts. It's when you play an Elton John song, you kind of go into a different stratosphere of music. It's like playing Beatles. It's like playing, you know, McCartney. Elton's he's going to go down in history as one of the best craftsmen of all time.
Elton Ron, if people want to check you out and come to one of your concerts, what's the best way to do that? Do you have a website, or is it Facebook, or what's the best way to follow you?
We have a website, www.eltonron, and that's ROHN. We took John and just changed it to Ron, so eltonron.com. But I invite everyone to come to Facebook, the Elton Ron fan page. I monitor all the questions. I'm always talking to the people online. I'm always announcing new shows. I've got some more new shows to announce. We're going to be going to Myrtle Beach again. We're going to be returning. I haven't posted that yet. So these are the types of things. I may just jump online tonight after we do this and just chat with some of the fans. They always are asking us to come to their towns, or they're requesting songs. And I find that Facebook is really good for that, because it's also our age demographic. We have a lot of adults that are 50 and up, and they use Facebook like crazy. So we have about maybe 8,000 followers right now, but we're going to get that up to 10,000 this summer. And it's a blast talking to the fans. The fans are fantastic. So
well, and you're a great performer, and I love getting up and dancing and singing along. It's a wonderful experience. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Ron Camilleri, Elton Ron, an Elton John tribute artist who comes from Mississauga, and the guy is just an incredible talent. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Ron Camilleri. He's an Elton John tribute artist. He goes under the name Elton Ron, and I've had the pleasure of watching a couple of your performances, and they've just been fantastic. You are an incredible musician, a very good singer, and an actor. You act like Elton John on stage. It's like you're at the real thing. So thank you for that. Though, you know, you've got really an interesting background, both yourself personally as well as your whole family. Maybe we can spend a couple minutes on that. I understand that your father was 30 years with CBS Records. Yeah. And when I was a kid, I didn't even know who half these people were, but my dad would be bringing the artists home. So we had, dinner with Bobby Vinton. And when I was about maybe 5 or 6, I actually sang Mr. Lonely to Bobby Vinton in my basement, and he played bongos. And that was like my first performance ever. My mom was like so proud of the fact that I had enough courage to sing in front of him. And then we went down to the C&E, where he played 2 sold-out nights at the grandstand. But, it would be nothing for my dad to come home with Johnny Cash or any of these guys. And I was so young, I didn't know who most of them were. But I was always around music. My dad always brought home all the albums. So I was exposed to music at such a young age. And then as soon as we were old enough to go to shows, he brought us to everything. So I saw Billy Joel at Massey Hall do 10 encores. I saw Bruce Springsteen at the Seneca College Fieldhouse. My dad and his best friend Eddie Claro, who worked at CBS, took us to Montreal to see Pink Floyd at the Big O. And these are experiences that I would never have done on my own. So they exposed me to all of these amazing artists. And I honestly think a lot of it is rubbed off on me. There's times where I see myself on stage now
where I say something to the audience that I actually would take from an old Bruce Springsteen concert, that I know that when he did it, the crowd went crazy. So I would kind of play off some of that stuff. So yeah, my dad had an iconic career. All of the artists, when they came to Canada, they absolutely loved him. His favorite act was Chicago, and he loved the horns. So when Elton John came out with Honky Cat, and my dad heard it on the radio, he brought that album home for me. So I was just a teenager, and that was my first exposure to Elton, and I absolutely loved it. Then he took me to see the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour at Maple Leaf Gardens, which blew my mind. And that's when I became a huge fan. So he exposed me to so many different types of music, everything from country to jazz. And he was great friends with like Willie Nelson and Wynton Marsalis and Tony Bennett. He sponsored Tony into the Variety Club of Canada, or Variety Club International, through the Toronto chapter. My dad was a big member of Variety. He did that for like 30 years as well. So yeah, my dad had a great career, and he's on the Mississauga Music Walk of Fame in the Port Credit Park. He's got a star there, right beside his buddy Ronnie Hawkins. He signed Ronnie to a record deal. My dad had a legendary career, so he started it all off for me and my brother. Yeah, it was just an unbelievable childhood.
He actually started off as a Toronto Argonaut and won some Grey Cups. Yeah,
he won 2 Grey Cups. He played with the legendary Joe Kroll and Royal Copeland, and he was on 2 Grey Cup teams. Then he broke his. He had something. Yeah, he had not an accident. He got hurt in practice. One of his own guys hit him, and he broke something, so he had to retire. He came back a couple of years later, and he won a Canadian softball championship. So he's actually a 2-sport champion in Canada. And then from there on, after that, he retired from sports, and he got a job working in the record industry, and he had a legendary career. So he had quite a life.
And knew Muhammad Ali and Ronnie Hawkins, Tony Bennett, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Winston Marsalis.
Yeah. Well, the Muhammad Ali is a really good story, because he was Cassius Clay at the time, and he was like just becoming the biggest thing in the world. And he did a spoken word album, and he came to Toronto for a full day of promotion. And my father was his promo rep, so he spent the entire day with Cassius Clay, and it wasn't soon after that became Muhammad Ali. But that he always remembers that as being like a really spectacular day for him. And then he said he was an incredible guy.
You sent me a picture where you must be just a teenager and you're with Burton Cummings. So you got to meet some of these people too.
Oh yeah, there's I don't have as many pictures now as I used to. I'm not really big on pictures. Even when I went Sony and I became at a certain level as an executive, I didn't collect a lot of the photos with the artists, because when I was a kid, they were just normal people to me. So getting photos with them wasn't all that. It was more of a big deal for me when I was a child than it was when I became an adult, because these guys put a lot in a day, and I don't really want to take up a lot of their time for photos. But yeah, I have pictures with everybody from Ted Nugent to Wynton Marsalis as a kid, and it was just a blast. Burton Cummings loved my dad, so by default, when I would come into a room, he would love me too, even though I couldn't really do much for him. But so it was just really great. It was great growing up, going to all the shows and meeting all the guys.
What an incredible experience! And then you and your brother followed him in his footsteps to CBS Records, I understand.
Yeah, so my brother Rick was a lawyer. I graduated from U of T out in Mississauga. And from there, I started working at Warner Brother Records. That was my first job. I did that for a few years. That was the most fun I ever had in the record business. And my brother worked at Capitol. He was an outside lawyer that ended up getting the inside counsel at Capitol Records. And my dad was at CBS. We all moved to CBS. I moved from Warner's to CBS. My brother moved from Capitol to CBS. We worked together for 2 weeks. Then my dad retired after 30 years. And my brother went on to become president of Sony Music Canada. And I became the director of the Columbia Records. So I ran the label for the division.
And then your brother, I understand, went to CanWest.
Yeah, he went to CanWest Global. He was the president there, working for the Aspers. Izzy hired him, Izzy Asper. He went out to Winnipeg. He was doing that on a weekly basis, flying back and forth. And it was that's when he called me and said, he goes, I got all these people that now work for me, 3,000 employees. Let's take a weekend and just blow off some steam and have some fun. And that's what took us into the bar to start playing again.
And does he play with you anymore?
No, he played for about the first year. And then he just said, I can't do this. I got to run a huge company. So we had to, that's when I went out there and really, really signed up a big band. But it was my brother's idea to start the whole thing. So he should get the credit for starting it, but he just wasn't able to sustain it because he had to go run a company.
And then tell me about this Elton John fan convention. You were the only Elton John tribute band that was asked to play, and and you played for the whole Elton John band other than Elton himself.
Yeah,
and you were called, I understand, by one of the musicians that Elton has a twin.
Yeah, Nigel, the drummer, came up to me. He says, "Oh my God, Elton has a twin." And Davy Johnson was so nice. When I went back, they had like a green room area for the convention, so all the fans were going to do a meet and greet with all of the band members, and they brought me back into a different room so I could meet them. And Davy right away saw me and called me over. We had touched base before. We had chatted online, which online is an amazing thing for chatting with people around the world. So Davy knew who I was. He called me over, and he just made me feel so great. And he and Nigel, I picked their brain for half an hour. All I wanted to talk about was the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road years and recording all those amazing albums, and they were so nice. But yeah, we got asked to play this convention. What happened was, once we came out of the bar and we started to elevate, we got asked to do the Burlington Sound of Music Festival. A really great guy, Andy, out of Boston Manor, had hired us to play there, and he said he was sponsoring the Burlington Sound of Music Festival tribute night. So we headlined that. From that, we got 2 other shows, and then all of a sudden I got a phone call. Would we consider playing at the Elton convention? And that was the point where I said, geez, I better take this seriously. I better get a sequin piano and get some jackets and some glasses. So we did, and we went down, and it was like magic. We met all the Elton fans. They loved us. We loved it. It was a great experience. We got to play Vegas. We also played the Hard Rock Cafe when we were there. And that was our really first foray into big US playing. And from that point, we had to continue on with our P2 work visa, which is a whole other story, how to get that. And then it just expanded from there. We started playing all the different states, and it's never stopped.
7 years in a row in Chicago, you were ranked the top show at the Large Outdoor Park Concert Series, named top tribute band of all time at the Lancaster Festival in Ohio. Yeah. Played to thousands of people. You played to over 12,000 people at the Greensburg, where they informed that your 2 shows there were the top ranked shows of all time. Played to over 11,000 people at Peterborough Music Festival. Sold out 2 nights at Seneca Niagara Casino. Sold out Gaiety Theatre in Collingwood 6 times. Sold out Port Hope Capitol Theatre 4 times. Goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and every time we play, we get the same reaction. It's really interesting because women get it right from the first time they buy the ticket. They can't wait for the fun. They come in the glasses and they're all dolled up. But the men, we have to convince the men, because a lot of the guys are going, I don't know if I want to see Elton John tribute. Then they come, and after about the second song, we got them. And at the end of the night, they all come to us. The women are all over us because they love us. Not all over us physically, but all over us saying how much they love the show. And the guys are like, I came here thinking that it was going to be, but you guys are really good. You guys rock. So that happens everywhere we play, and it's consistent and city to city. Now we have fans, like when we play Chicago, and we announce it every year. We have all these people on Facebook that I chat with. They book their holidays around our show, and they come into Chicago just to see us there. It's so much easier now to play a show, because now we just have to decide where do we want to go back. Whereas when we first started, we had to try to convince people who we were. Now they want us. So the demand is there. Now we just have fun with it.
Over 400 shows across Canada and the United States.
Yeah, so far.
Played internationally at all?
Yeah, we went to, we just did a thing in Barbados. We played a private party down there. Actually, it wasn't so private. They sold tickets. And that was an amazing experience, but it was kind of crazy because it's a whole different vibe down there. So we played at this private yacht club at a big outdoor stage. And they had security there, but security in Barbados is totally different than security in the United States. And that's because they're dancing and they're partying with all the people. And I had 3 people come up on stage. The first 2 were friendly. The third one wasn't. And the third one came up and said something in my ear. And it's almost like the whole show was going to stop. And then he just ran off the stage, and security didn't even budge. So it's a whole different vibe when you play internationally. We've been asked to go all the way across to Europe. We've been asked to go to the UK. And it takes a lot of planning. We're looking at doing some different things, maybe going to Europe. But right now we're having so much fun in North America. And as I say, my guys work. So we're kind of weekend warriors. It's kind of hard to do a European tour when the guys have a job to go to on Monday. So
how do you do California or Vegas? You got to fly back on Sunday night.
Yeah. Well, my guys have so many days that they can give me a year. So basically I book them from Wednesday to Sunday every weekend. And then once they hit their maximum amount of time, then I have to either curtail playing, or we just go to a Saturday night show where we can leave on a Friday. fly in on a Saturday
And
morning.
are
It
most
gets
of
a
the
little tricky.
musicians from the Mississauga or Toronto area?
They're all from this area, and they helped me because I'm not really one of these musician insiders. I didn't start playing live till I was 50 years old. It's crazy, and I didn't know a lot of the musicians around. So through different people, like my keyboard player actually approached me at a gig and said I should be your keyboard player, and I ended up hiring him. And then he found me, the guitar player. The guitar player came from a bass player who knew this. They know everybody. I don't know everyone, so they brought the band in. And after a little bit of massaging the band and the personnel, we've got it now. Everybody in the band plays phenomenally well. And that's one of the things that I any time in the show, I can just turn to any one of them and just have them pick it up in solo and do whatever they want in it. We play everything live. We won't do anything to tracks. I would never be a track band. So because we play live and the guys are great musicians, we have the flexibility and the freedom to make songs explode. We can do one song 4 minutes one night, 6 minutes the next. So that's one of the keys of the show, I think, is that we play the way Elton John used to play. Elton used to play piano, and if he was into it, he would go off for 5 minutes doing piano. We do the same thing.
What a great, fun experience you're having.
It's absolutely a blast. It's not, the only work is at the start of the year, coordinating your routes, so that if we're going to go play in Arizona, I have to find 2 or 3 other places to make the trip worthwhile. So we're not flying all the way to Arizona for one show. That's the work side of it, doing contract negotiation. But who knew? I mean, all my years at Sony gave me all the negotiation skills and all the business skills. That's one of the things that the tribute industry doesn't have. Most of the guys are musicians. They don't have that business side. I have a business background, so I manage the band and I do most 90-something% of our bookings, and I can handle contract negotiation. So it's been a real advantage, but that's the only work part of it. Once we hit the stage or once we're actually in the plane and we're flying, it's a blast. And they treat us so nice. We'll walk into these casinos or venues. They treat us like we're superstars. And I'm going, really? It's like fruit trays and meals and hotels and shuttle services. It's crazy. They treat us like we're rock stars. It's phenomenal.
Ron Camilleri, Elton Ron, Elton John tribute band. What an incredible experience you're having. And you perform incredible good music. And it's a fun night out. It's a very fun night out. I recommend it to everyone. What's the website that they should go to again?
www.eltonronrohn.com.
Awesome.
And
We're going to
visit
take
us
2
on,
minutes. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, visit us on Facebook at Elton Ron fan page. That's where I am. I spend most of my time there. I'll chat with all of you. If you have some venues you want us to come play, let me know.
We're going to take 2 minutes and come back with Elton Ron.
Great.
Ron Camilleri. Stay around, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with an incredible local talent, Ron Camilleri, who's traveled around North America, performed over 400 performances as Elton Ron, an Elton John tribute act. And the guy is amazing. I got to tell you, I've had the pleasure of listening to him a couple times now, and it's just an incredible evening out. Ron, you called me up once and then sent me an email when I was president of the Mississauga Arts Council, quite upset that you said tribute bands don't get any respect, and that you had never been asked to headline a festival or anything in Mississauga, your hometown, and that you were really quite upset about it. Tell me about how it feels to not get the respect in your own hometown that you think you deserve.
Well, actually, it's actually a little worse than that. We actually were invited twice to perform at events in Mississauga, and then both times we were struck off the lineup. And Mississauga is totally different than any other city we've ever played. And we've, as I said, done like hundreds of shows. In Mississauga, for some reason, a lot of the artists embed themselves into the committees. So we were asked to headline one of your events at a decent venue. And then one of the players who's on the committee would go to the head of the festival and say that bands like mine shouldn't be playing festivals like that. To which I say, like, music is music. If people like a band, they should be given a chance to play. And if I'm a local resident, and there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to hit a stage that another resident can play. So I just find Mississauga is really weird that I get it. Like, a lot of these local players are protecting their own. So they know that this is their chance to hit the big stage once a year. So what I did was, at first I was upset about it. Now I just use it as motivation to say, okay, the best thing you can do when you get blocked like this, and we've had three musicians that have blocked us from playing Mississauga. So for over 10 years, my band hasn't headlined a festival or a theater at all in Mississauga. We continually get turned down. And usually there's excitement about us. It gets tabled and then someone shuts it down. And then I find out one of the guys in the committee books his own band to play. So rather than fight the system, I used it as motivation. And I said, okay, screw it. We're going to go to the US. We're going to do bigger and better things. And my philosophy in life is when someone shuts the door, you leave them in your dust. So from that point on, we got Las Vegas, Atlantic City. We've done all these shows in the States. We're making far more successful inroads in the United States than we have ever done locally. And it's just really strange that a band at our level, I would say probably us and Brass Transit are the two top tributes in Canada. And yet we don't get an opportunity to play our own hometown. I think it's probably happened to many artists across North America that they never get the respect in their own hometown, but that's okay. We just use it for motivation, as I say, and I'm over it now. And now we're out there playing so many big venues, it doesn't matter anymore. But I just feel sorry for all my local fans, my old high school buddies. They're always bugging me, when are you going to come play locally? We just never get the opportunity to do it.
Well, I agree. I don't have to go all the way to Coburg to watch you perform. I want to see you close by.
Yeah, I know it's crazy, but I spoke to the Waterfront Festival before they collapsed for like 8 years, and every year they said they would talk to us, and every year they passed on us. Your Canada Day celebrations, haven't played that in 10 years. The last time I did that was when I was with my old band. 12 years ago was the last time we played a stage in Mississauga. It's crazy.
Well, if I can do anything about it, I will try, because I think you're fantastic. Ron, you've been in several different sectors of the music industry as an executive and as a performer. Tell me about how those different places are different. Those sectors are different.
That's a good question. They are different. When I was at Sony Music, when I was running Columbia, it was very much artist relations, very much negotiations, very much just kind of being there, making sure that the wheel kept turning. So I didn't have to really initiate a lot of stuff on my own. I kind of had to make sure, like, for instance, when Celine Dion's record would come out, that we don't screw it up. It was that kind of a feeling every time you'd get a Bruce Springsteen or a Mariah Carey or a Celine Dion record. And then a Canadian talent, we would push like hell to help that develop into big superstars. So the record company had Amanda Marshall and, of course, Celine, and then we had Our Lady Peace and all these different bands that were signed. So the record companies would work really hard to build the Canadian content. So that was more of a real team thing, but a lot of being on top of it, pencil to paper, a lot of budgets, a lot of P&Ls. Whereas once I started, the next phase I went into, I built this studio here that you might see behind me. I started composing for television and documentaries. And that's totally, I'm on my own. I'm sitting here in my studio by myself, recording for hours upon hours, and I'm my own boss. And then I send it out to the production team who place it into the show or the documentary, or I'm asked to do a certain music for a certain scene. So that's a totally different flip-flop. But there wasn't a lot of negotiation other than, when the royalties showed up with SOCAN, which was really easy to do. So that was like a complete change in my life. And now that I'm playing, I'm taking that skill that I learned from when I was at the record company for the negotiations of the contracts and working with the venues, advancing stage plots and input lists, and talking to them about, the marketing, especially the marketing side of it. When I used to market at Sony Music, I would market Bruce Springsteen or Tony Bennett or Pink Floyd. Now I have to market Elton Ron. So this is a walk in the park compared to marketing Pink Floyd. So I can sit with their marketing people and I can show them what I know, and they can show me what they know, because markets always change. Every city's different, but at least we can talk on a certain level so that we can make intelligent conversations so that we can market our show to be successful. So that's really helped me a lot as Elton Ron, to have that Sony Music experience. And even my guys in the band, they're kind of marveled at the fact that a lot of times when I take over the negotiation with the venue, how much I can come back with from the venue. And they appreciate the fact that I'm on top of it and that I have a business sense so that we can talk on a little bit of a different level. A lot of musicians today don't have the business side down pat, and they don't work at it, and they don't want to work at it because they want to be musicians. I'm going to tell everyone out there, as a musician, The one thing you want to do is you want to understand the business of it, especially if you want to try to make money in the music industry. If you don't understand the business side of it, you can get run over. So take the time to learn as much as you can, pick the brain. I get people calling me all the time from other bands. Kudos for them for asking the questions, because you need to know how to do your P2 to be able to travel into the United States to make money, how to negotiate contracts, what you should be asking for, all kinds of riders and stuff. So there's a business side to everything you do. So all three facets are totally different, but I think I've been able to take a little bit of everything and help me succeed as Elton and even as a composer. That early days in the record companies really kind of laid me a foundation for the knowledge to make them all work.
I want to ask you about the industry, since you've had this experience as a radio executive, as a solo composer, and now as a performer / musician. I had Tom Barlow, a local performer, on my show, and he said that it's really difficult, if not, frankly, almost impossible, to make money today as a performer, particularly if you're doing bar dates, because people just don't go out as often. There aren't the larger venues. And that, you just don't make money with albums anymore, with all the streaming services. And then he said that he worried about the future of the music industry because it would be people that had to have full-time jobs, were the only people that could do music, and they would do it as a hobby. And then I had Gil Moore, former drummer of Triumph, on my show, who runs Metalworks. And he was saying he agreed with that, but then he said the biggest problem is those middle tier venues. He said, you've got the bars and you got the big arenas, and what you need more of is those couple thousand seat places. And he said, in the example he uses, the Port Credit Legion or the Masonic Lodge or a bunch of other places that were, between 500 and a couple thousand seats. And he says, that's what you need, because that's where people can start to make some money. What do you think about the ability to make a business out of a livelihood out of being a musician? Is it more challenging today? Is it as difficult as Barlow was suggesting?
I think it depends on your level of your talent. I think for a lot of artists, they just. I remember at one time I had a chat with Tom Barlow in a bar, and he was saying how he was signed at Sony, and Sony didn't do a good job. And I kind of shake my head every time an artist likes to blame the record company. And my reaction, anytime an artist tries to point the finger at a company, I said, do you ever think maybe the record wasn't good enough? When you get an artist like Chantal Kreviazak or Amanda Marshall, and that record is so good, it just succeeds because radio want to play it. If you write a song, one time I used to work with Randy Bachman, and he had his son Tal Bachman. He wanted me to hear this demo, and that demo turned out to be She's So High. And that record was so good it couldn't be stopped. So if your music's good enough and you can go out and tour and you can put on a really good live show, and that song gets played a lot, you can definitely make money in the industry. It's like, the problem is only 5% of the population is good enough to do it. 95% think they're probably good enough to do it. And I know because when I used to run Columbia, we used to get all kinds of people submitting their music to us, and it just wasn't there. When you hear a hit record for the first time, it puts a chill down your spine. Like sometimes you hear it, you go, wow, I want to hear more from this artist. And those are the types of records that are easier for record companies to work because they know they're going to open doors. When you get a song that's just like every other thing on the radio or sounds like a whole bunch of other things that have already been done, it's a lot harder to get through that door because radio have so many artists already to play. Let's face it, like in the old days, there used to be a real problem for people that kind of grew up in the 80s, that when you released a record, well, if U2, Madonna, Phil Collins, Don Henley are all releasing their albums that week, you're not going to get on the chart. There's only so many places on a chart. Now there's so much diversity in how you can get your music out. You don't need to spend $50,000 on a video anymore. I think videos used to kill artists in Canada. I remember guys like Larry Gowan used to do these really big animated videos. They were really expensive. And record companies are nothing more than a big bank. So as a company, we would invest in the artist and we would spend all this money on the van that they're driving, on their hotels, on all their clothes. We would advance them all this money. It's all recoupable. So when they used to do all these videos, those videos are recoupable. If they did 3 videos at $50,000 a video, that's $150,000 worth of royalties that are going to immediately go back to the record company before the artist makes a dime. So all of these artists that thought it was really important to throw a video out and keep doing videos, it would kill their career. And most of them didn't make money. because they wasted so much money on the things that they shouldn't have been spending money on. And record companies weren't smart either, because they kept doing these videos. I used to sit and look at all kinds of bands. We had a great conversation, Tom Wilson from Junk House. He says, let's do another video. He would laugh now every time I see him, because he realized, going back to the day, there were so many videos that were recoupable. They had trouble getting out of the hole. So it's just, it was a freak of nature that videos cost so much at the time. Now, in today's market, you don't need to spend $50,000 on a video anymore. You can take a good cell phone, you can edit it at your own home program, and you can put out something viral. Look at some of these records get picked up, they get a good publishing deal, and then next thing you know, you're selling Apple products, and you make a fortune off your publishing, and then you can create some type of a career from that. We had, Fly Like a Bird was recorded in our Sony home studio. When you get a good song, and that song starts to strike chords with people start talking about it. Like when Alanis Morissette did her album, she didn't have that problem. When Nelly Furtado did her record, she didn't have that problem. Amanda Marshall didn't have that problem. The people that complain the most are the ones that don't have that it factor to get to that next stage. And for a record company, they're always looking for the it factor. So when a Justin Bieber comes along, you say, oh, his music is fluffy and that. He had an it factor that a record company would be able to capitalize on to make a fortune. And that's exactly what they did. So it doesn't matter who the artist is or what the genre is. Companies are looking for that little special thing. And the only other thing I'll say to an artist, don't copy what's already out there. Because I used to have people call me in my office all the time and say, I have the next Celine Dion. My answer would always be the same. We don't need another Celine Dion. We have a Celine Dion. I want something new. That's why Alanis Morissette was so popular. She did something totally different than what was in the marketplace at the time. It sounded so fresh and so unique. And she did this to guys type of a record, and it caught fire. If she would have come out and done a love record like all the other artists that were on the radio, it would have just been blended in with everything else. So kudos to her, and to any artist that tries to do something different. Make your own mark, and then take it, do a nice cheap video on your cell phone, get that little street thing happening, start playing some gigs, get a following, and you can build it. You don't have, I don't even think you need record companies anymore, to tell you the truth, until you get to that level you want to expand it around the world. To really start a career now, you don't need to spend a lot of money, not like the old days.
Ron, what is the it factor that you referred to? Lots of people refer to the it factor. What is it?
Well, it can be the music. Like sometimes I'll hear a demo. We used to get demos on my desk all the time, and I listened to them. I said, it was okay. There was nothing really fantastic about it, but it was okay. And then you look at the artist and you say, okay, are they marketable? I remember the first time I heard this story, it wasn't me, but the A&R department, the first time Our Lady Peace came into the Sony Music Building, and they presented, Arnold Landy presented the Our Lady Peace album, and it was almost fully done. They had done it all in their own studio. The first thing we took a look at was Rain Maida, their lead singer. We said, wow, this guy is marketable. Let's listen to the music. The music was power. It was punchy. It was a little bit Pearl Jam meets this. So we said, we don't have that on our label in Canada. This is something that, wow, if we can find a really good act that can do this, we're laughing. So we signed Our Lady Peace, and then we put it in that Sony machine. Next thing you know, we had a massive hit on our hands that was all through the States, and then it got picked up from the LA office. They started marketing it all across the Americas, and we had a big hit. So the it factor to me is something that stands out about this artist that you don't see every day in all the other artists. I was never, when I did Columbia, I was never looking for something of the same. I always said, boy, we could use a Bryan Adams. By that, I meant I don't need another copycat Bryan Adams, but I would love to find someone who shakes up the industry the way Bryan Adams did. Here was a young kid, great songwriter between him and Jim Vallance, writing for Loverboy. But when he hit the stage, I saw them open for Loverboy. He was powerful. He ran around the stages like Bruce Springsteen meets this. I said, this guy has got it. There's something about him. One time I saw Elton John perform at the O'Keefe Center, a solo tour with just him and Ray Cooper on percussion. They had I think they had an opening act there. Impressed the hell out of me. I can't remember the name. But here, I'll give you a better example. I went to see at the O'Keefe Center, Kenny Loggins, and the opening act was this guy who came out with a small band, and he played 4 or 5 songs that knocked me on my ass. It was Vince Gill. He had the vocals, he had the look, he played a great guitar, he had everything. I said, this guy's going to be a star. And I didn't know who he was. And you can just tell, especially if you're trained in the record industry to look for that certain thing. A&R guys do it much better than I did, but I still have the ability that, well, I can listen to 10 albums and I can tell you which one I think probably has the best potential. And that's what the record industry was really good at, finding that potential. The people that complain the most didn't have the it factor. And that's the easiest way to suggest it. Now, Triumph had the it factor. They blew your mind when you saw their show. That was a power trio like crazy. Rush had an it factor. There was something about them that people just went to when you see them. What was it about Rush? Well, they were cool. They played amazing music. They could play really well. And they didn't do things like everyone else. They did things their own way. That's an it factor. You know, you see it all the time. You see it with bands coming out every day. There's somebody coming out. When we first heard Pearl Jam, what's the first thing you said? Oh my God, listen to Pearl Jam. This is an incredible band. That's the it factor.
We're chatting tonight with Ron Camilleri, Elton Ron, an Elton John tribute artist from Mississauga that just is fantastic. I highly recommend you go check him out and go to one of his concerts. Stay with us, everyone. We'll back in 2 minutes with some final comments from Elton Ron Camilleri. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga Night 60. My guest tonight is Ron Camilleri. He performs as Elton Ron. He's an Elton John tribute act. He's from Mississauga. The guy is fantastic. I've heard him perform, and I highly recommend you go to one of his concerts, one of his performances. They're wonderful. Ron, if someone else wants to become a musician, launch a band or launch a tribute band, what would you tell them?
Well, first thing I tell everybody is practice, practice, practice. And we used to get demos into ourselves all the time from singer-songwriters who would write 5 songs and they'd immediately want to send it to a record company. And I always gave them the same advice. When you write your first 5 songs, put them aside, wait a year, because in a year's time, your songs are going to be so much better than those first 5 songs you ever wrote. So don't try to go too far too fast, but be very honest about your talent. Say, what is it that I do really well? How can I present myself so I'm a little bit different? How are my songs going to stand out? Then get some good musicians together, play for fun. Don't play for money, play for fun. Go out, play some venues, sow your oats on the stage, learn all your mistakes. And then when you're ready, then you do your big pitch. Then you do your thing. You say, okay, we want to record an album. Some people can do it really quickly. Some people need a large amount of years, but just be really honest with your talent. Figure out what the market is and how you think you can fit into it. Get a good manager. If you can't manage your own daily activities, get a good manager. That's really hard to do. There's not that many great managers in Canada. There's not that many Bruce Allens and that in the world. So the better the manager you have, the more doors you can get open for yourselves. And then just write lots of music or play lots of music. Get better at it to the point where you will be considered one of the best at it. The reason my band is so popular is because we happen to do Elton John really, really well, probably better than almost anyone else who's doing it. And we've been able to market ourselves and put ourselves out there so people can discover us. And then it's all about when a door opens up, how do you go through it? So as a musician, just be smart, get some really good people around you, work hard, do it every day, try to write as many songs as you can, try to get out there and play as many shows as you can, get better at your craft. And then do it for fun. Don't do it for the money. And if things happen for you, go for it.
March 9th, you're playing in Coburg. On April 27th, you're playing in Stratford. May 3rd in Markham at the Flato Theatre. May 4th in Collingwood. Those are your local shows coming up in the next
those are local.
Couple of months. Everyone, Elton Ron Camilleri. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Brian.
You got to check him out. He's fantastic. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Thank you for joining. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. Thanks very much, everybody. Good night.